Broken Wings and Starlit Chains. Chapter 1: The Fall. The descent wasn't gentle. Azaleel plummeted from the heavens, his once lustrous wings a tangle of ash and fire. The searing pain of separation from the divine tore through him, more brutal than any wound. As he spiraled downward, the heavens seemed to weep, flashes of light and thunder echoing his anguish. The world below, once a distant realm he had admired from above, grew closer and sharper. It rushed toward him, indifferent to his fall. When he crashed into the mortal realm, the earth convulsed beneath him. A shallow crater formed around his broken body, and the sky above him closed like a heavy door, cutting him off from everything he had known. The scent of charred feathers mingled with the earthy tang of damp soil. He groaned, his voice raspy and unfamiliar as he dragged himself to his knees. His hands, once so steady, now trembled as they clawed at the dirt. Above, the heavens shimmered coldly, their light unyielding and distant. But there was one star, one solitary, stubborn light, that refused to dim. Selathiel was still watching. In the quiet that followed his fall, Azaleel's mind reeled. He had known exile would be harsh, but nothing had prepared him for the hollow ache in his chest, the severance from the divine chorus that had been his constant companion. He was alone now, bound to the mortal world, and every beat of his heart reminded him of what he had lost. But even in the midst of his despair, a strange sense of purpose stirred within him. This world was raw, chaotic, and teeming with life. It was everything he had fought for, everything he had been willing to lose his place in the heavens to protect. Chapter 2: The Watcher. Selathiel stood at the celestial gates, her luminous wings folded tightly around her as if to shield her from the growing storm inside her. Below, she could see him, a solitary figure moving through the mortal realm, his once pristine form now marred by his fall. The other angels avoided the gates, their gazes turned away from the mortal plane. For them, Azaleel's fall was a cautionary tale, a warning of what awaited those who defied the divine order. But for Selathiel, it was something else entirely. Memories of him were etched deeply into her soul. She remembered the way he questioned everything, his voice filled with a passion that set him apart from the others. Where most angels followed the divine will without hesitation, Azaleel had sought understanding. They had sparred together, trained together, and in quiet moments beneath the eternal tree, they had shared dreams and doubts that neither dared voice aloud. Selathiel's fingers curled around the edge of the gate. The council's decrees rang in her ears. Asterisk the fallen are beyond redemption. Do not look back. Do not reach for them, asterisk. But how could she not? From her perch, she saw him stumble through dense forests, his movements unsteady. She saw the flicker of pain in his eyes as he watched humans who flinched from his presence, sensing something otherworldly in his broken form. And she felt the first stirrings of defiance in her heart. Chapter 3: The Meeting. The fire crackled softly in the clearing, its dim light casting shadows across the ruined feathers that clung to Azaleel's back. He stared into the flames, his thoughts a storm of regret and resolve. For all his pain, he didn't regret his choice. The mortals he watched from afar had a beauty in their imperfections, a tenacity that angels couldn't comprehend. But their world was colder than he had imagined. The villagers whispered of him, their voices tinged with fear. Some called him a demon, others saw him as an omen. No one dared approach the wingless stranger who roamed their forests. Until tonight, Azaleel. The voice sent a shiver down his spine. It was soft yet resonant, carrying with it the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. He turned sharply, his eyes widening at the sight of her. Selathiel stood at the edge of the clearing, her silver wings shimmering in the firelight. She was radiant, untouched by the harshness of the mortal world, and her gaze pierced through him. "You shouldn't be here," Azaleel said, his voice hoarse. "And yet, here I am," she replied, stepping closer. Her eyes roamed over his disheveled form, lingering on the jagged remnants of his wings. "Why did you do it?" He laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "You wouldn't understand. None of you ever did. "Then make me understand," she said, her voice steady but pleading. Azaliel hesitated, his hands curling into fists. The truth felt too heavy to speak, but the sight of her, so familiar, so achingly beautiful, unlocked something within him. "I couldn't stand by anymore," he said finally, his voice low. "We call ourselves guardians, but we are nothing more than observers. They needed help, real help, and we turned our backs on them. I couldn't do it anymore, Sellafiel. I couldn't be a passive watcher while they suffered." Her breath caught, his words striking something deep within her. She had seen glimpses of humanity's struggles, but had always dismissed them as part of the divine plan. Now, standing before Azaliel, she began to question everything. Chapter 4. The Forbidden Bond. Days turned into weeks, and their meetings became a dangerous routine. Sellafiel descended whenever the stars veiled her presence, seeking Azaliel in the shadows of the mortal world. In the quiet of abandoned chapels and moonlit clearings, they spoke of humanity, of heaven, and of the unspoken bond that had always existed between them. Azaliel showed her the world through his eyes, its fragility, its beauty, and its pain. Sellafiel began to see humanity differently. She saw the courage of a farmer who prayed despite his failing crops, the quiet resilience of a widow who sang lullabies to an empty cradle. These weren't creatures to be pitted or judged. They were to be cherished. But with each meeting, the weight of their choices grew heavier. The council was not blind, and whispers of Sellafiel's absences began to spread. One night, as they stood beneath the sprawling canopy of an ancient oak, Azaliel turned to her, his expression shadowed by doubt. "Why do you keep coming back, Sellafiel?" Her wings trembled, the light in them dimming slightly. "Because I care about you." He stepped closer, his gaze searching hers. "Do you? Or do you pity me?" She shook her head, her voice trembling. "It's not pity. It's something I don't fully understand, but it's real. And it's stronger than anything I've ever known." For a moment, the world around them seemed to hold its breath. Azaliel reached out, his fingers brushing hers. The contact sent a shockwave through both of them, a forbidden connection that defied the laws of their existence. Chapter 5. The Choice. The heavens roared with fury. Sellafiel stood before the council, their luminous forms towering above her. "You have betrayed us," the eldest angel intoned, his voice a cold thunder. "Do you deny it?" "No," Sellafiel said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I do not deny it." The council's judgment was swift. "If you continue down this path, you will share his fate." When Sellafiel returned to Earth, her heart was heavy but resolute. She found Azaliel waiting in the ruins of a forgotten temple, his form framed by broken stained glass. "They know," she said simply. Azaliel's face darkened. "Then you shouldn't be here." "I made my choice," she replied, stepping closer. "I choose you." Before he could respond, the heavens erupted in a storm of light and fury. Sellafiel's wings began to dissolve, their radiant silver fading into ash. Azaliel caught her as she stumbled, holding her as her divine essence fell away. For the first time, they were truly equal. Two broken beings, bound by love and cast out of the heavens. And as they stood together in the mortal world, the stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if blessing their forbidden bond.